If you look across the world today, you can find a ton of ridiculous laws. No whistling underwater, no letting donkeys sleep in your bathtub, no boarding a plane in flight, no selling dog hair, no riding a horse over 10 miles an hour, no sending surprise pizzas, and the list goes on and on. Sometimes, however, you do find sensible legislation, like the law in Chester, England, permitting anyone to shoot a Welshman with a bow and arrow after midnight if they're within the city limits. I mean, that just makes all the sense in the world. But if you think that's odd, you clearly haven't set foot in the ancient world. Today, we'll be continuing our series on law and order in Rome by exploring some of the craziest laws on their books. This video was sponsored by Magellan TV. They're an awesome documentary streaming service run by filmmakers with a selection of over 2,000 videos to choose from the categories of history, science, nature, space, and more. When it comes to history documentaries, Magellan TV has the richest and most varied content anywhere. Ancient, modern, current, war, biography, and even related genres like science and crime, which are historical in nature. If you like our content, I can highly recommend you check out the documentary series Meet the Romans, which focuses on the everyday life of people in ancient Rome. Magellan TV is compatible with Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google Play, and iOS, which means you can watch it anytime, anywhere, on your television, laptop, or mobile device. Sign up today to get a 1-month free membership trial by visiting the link in the description below or going to magellantv.com/invicta. In our last video, we provided a historical overview of how Roman law evolved over the years. Early on, this began as a series of customary laws, some of which were eventually written down as a series of 12 tables in the 6th century BC. These reflected the quite small and agrarian nature of the community. For instance, you can find prohibitions against grazing in someone else's fields, against enchanting crops, against burying the dead within the city limits, and more. It's really worth having a read through yourself, and I'll be posting a link below for you to check out. Over the centuries though, Rome would outgrow its humble legal origins by amending or passing new laws to address its needs. What resulted was a rich legal history that sheds light on the inner workings of Roman culture. Let's now run through a list of the ones I find most fascinating. The city of Rome was not always an empire, and began as a relatively small rural farming state. As such, the laws around farming were incredibly strict. One was forbidden from pasturing on, cutting stealthily by night, or cursing another person's crops. If a farmer plowed up a boundary stone, both he and his oxen faced more harsh punishment than if they had committed a murder. This entailed being hung up in sacrifice to Ceres, the goddess of harvest. So while modern crime shows would depict a scene like this as the end result of some deranged cultist in action, the Romans would have seen this same result as some good old-fashioned country justice. Another example of this early agrarian aspect of Roman law is captured in section 8 of the 12 tables. Quote, "If a weapon has sped accidentally from one's hand, rather than if one has aimed and hurled it, to atone for the deed, a ram is substituted as a peace offering to prevent blood revenge." So yeah, apparently it was quite common back then to accidentally spear your neighbor, so much so that they had to come up with a rule for it, in which they inscribed it for permanent posterity and memorization in the 12 tables. You know, you might commonly hear, "Oh shoot, my bad Gaius, didn't see you there. Here, take this here ram, no hard feelings. No worries, neighbor." Rural Rome was a bit crazy, and it does remind me of the other shenanigans the Romans had with throwing blood-tipped spears into enemy territory to signify war, so the spear very handy there, as you can tell. But not all matters could be dealt with so simply. For most cases, Romans would turn to the court system as a place to adjudicate legal disputes. We'll cover this more in depth in another video. Anyways, just as today, basically anyone could be brought to court for a complaint. That whole going to court thing, though, could be an issue, if for instance you were a poor farmer living away from the city. Thus, for the sake of justice, it was legally mandated that the prosecutor had to provide the defendant with a wagon if they were unable to make the journey to the city by themselves due to sickness or age. At the same time though, the law made it very clear that while the means of transport had to be provided, the prosecutor was not required to provide cushions. And that's why it pays to have a good lawyer, folks. Know your rights. Another interesting legacy of Rome's early history would be the strict set of rules which governed its priests. They were not allowed to take oaths, pass more than 3 nights away from the city, see a corpse, or witness an army on campaign. A priest was not allowed to ride a horse, not allowed to have a knot anywhere in his house or on his clothing, and was never allowed to be at a table that did not have food on it. Though that last one sounds like something concocted by some particularly gluttonous politician. Aw shucks, what's that? Another table? Guess you guys gotta bring me food again. And this is definitely something I would exploit back in the day, get me some garum for sure. Some other particularly weird taboos were that priests could only get their hair and nails cut by a slave with specifically a bronze knife. These clippings then had to be buried in a secret place. Again, this just seems like another awfully convenient rule to excuse the lazy priest whose secret place just so happened to be under the couch. Speaking of religious figures, we would be remiss to skip over the Vestal Virgins. They were some of the most powerful women in the Roman world, with an equally powerful set of laws to back them up. For example, one such rule was that, if by chance they came upon a criminal on the way to his execution, the criminal's life was spared. However, to avoid foul play, this had to occur by chance and could not have been prearranged. The truth of these matters required the Vestal herself to swear that it was just a coincidence. But criminals shouldn't get too eager, attempting to bump into these holy women seeking forgiveness. If someone walked underneath the litter in which a Vestal Virgin was carried, for instance, that person was immediately sentenced to death. How's that for an extreme game of limbo? Another individual in Roman society with extreme power was the paterfamilias, or the father of the family. In Rome, the domestic sphere was largely left unregulated, and thus the paterfamilias reigned over their household with virtual unlimited authority. This power applied not just to his slaves, but also to his wife and his children, who were not free of his will even as adults. The ancient Greek Dionysius of Halicarnassus reports that, quote, "The Romans gave virtually full power to the father over his son, even during his whole life, whether he thought proper to imprison him, to scourge him, to put him in chains and keep him at work in the fields, or even to put him to death. And this even though his son were already engaged in public affairs, though his son were numbered amongst the highest magistrates, and even though his son were celebrated for his zeal for the commonwealth." To put this in modern terms, apparently even if your son were someone as powerful as the president, you could still give them a whooping and toss them in jail for displeasing you. The power of the paterfamilias extended so far that you could even legally sell your son into slavery, which was actually one of the only ways a Roman citizen was even able to become enslaved. But as a final twist to the story, the child could get off on a technicality. Apparently, if a father already sold you off into slavery 3 times, on the 4th time he attempted to do so, you were finally released from his control, so you have that to look forward to. Despite the power of the paterfamilias, the private sphere was not entirely unregulated. One of the main ways in which this was controlled came in the form of sumptuary laws meant to curb excessive luxury. These appear to have been passed throughout Roman history as a way to keep the population from getting too soft physically and morally. As an example, the first of these stated that, quote, "No woman should have above half an ounce of gold, nor wear a dress of different colors, nor ride in a carriage in the city or in any town, or within a mile of it." Many people, and especially the upper classes, simply ignored such laws, but they were a strong reminder of the societal expectations of what it meant to be a virtuous, simple living Roman. This image was something championed by political figures like Cato, who fought to uphold traditional values in an age when wealth was seen to be increasingly corrupting society. As a result, we actually see more and more sumptuary laws introduced over time to curb such excessive spending on entertainment, funerals, and even foods. One of the most famous of these was the Lex Julia, which was rigorously enforced by Julius Caesar during his dictatorship. Apparently, Caesar posted men in the markets to ensure that his guidelines were being followed, and even sent law enforcement to crash parties hosting lavish banquets. It's no wonder he ended up being assassinated after all. Speaking of regulating fun, let's talk about gambling. Just as today, the Romans had tons of ways to keep entertained in the form of dice and board games. However, as a way to once again uphold Roman virtue, the vast majority of gambling and gaming was expressly forbidden by law. But there were a lot of ways to get around this. Apparently, the only legal forms of gambling were using food as betting articles, or playing for money in athletic competitions such as running, jumping, javelin throwing, boxing, wrestling, etc. You get the picture. Of course, as with many rules, law enforcement could be pretty spotty. Just bribe an official to look the other way, or wait for a special holiday. For example, in December during Saturnalia, games of chance were not only played, but were actually encouraged. If you had a particularly intense gambling addiction, then you could look forwards to retirement, since old men were actually allowed to game as much as they wanted. Those Roman retirement homes were wilder than orgies, and maybe even included some. But not all Romans enjoyed the perks of growing old. Many died young as the result of sickness, battle, or unexpected tragedy. Worst of all, though, would be if your passing was accompanied by dark omens. For example, if a person was killed by a lightning bolt, it was seen as a sign from the gods that the person was wicked, cursed, or had engaged in evil activities. Their body then became a cursed object in and of itself, denied of any honors or the right to be buried. Any grieving family members who broke this prohibition would be offered in sacrifice to Jupiter, lest he strike down the whole community in vengeance. So yeah, a lot of Roman remedies for things seems to be sacrifice. Pretty intense. But perhaps one of the most curious penalties in the Roman world belonged to the crime of murdering a close family member. This was considered to be one of the most serious crimes a person could commit. As such, the penalty was also one of the most extreme. The guilty party was sewn into a sack alive, along with a venomous snake, a dog, a rooster, and an ape. The sack was there not only to trap the criminal, but also to keep him from polluting the world any further. And to guarantee this, the sack containing this odd assemblage was then thrown into the nearest body of water, where everything inside would drown, if they had not already killed each other fighting it out inside of that sack. So yeah, fair warning to any of you would-be time travelers, don't break any Roman laws. But anyways, that's just a peek into the crazy world of Roman law. I hope it's proved both entertaining and enlightening, but be sure to check out the rest of our series on law and order in ancient Rome to learn more about things like lawyers, the police, jails, and much more. A huge thanks to all of our patrons who help fund this channel, and the researchers, writers, and artists who made this video possible. See you in the next one.